Competition is pretty intense for a good $100 football boot. And here I've got what will likely be one of the most popular options at that price, and that's the Predator League FT. And then alongside it, I've also got the premium Predator Elite, which is gonna retail for $280. So in this video, we're gonna discuss all the features of the Predator League and also discuss what it's like to play in compared to its more expensive counterpart. So by the end of the video, you'll have a good idea whether or not these are a reliable budget option or if you should look elsewhere. I'm also gonna have links and discounts to all the boots we discuss in the description below. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. We've got new videos coming out every week. And with that, let's start things off with the design. So it may seem at first glance that these affordable Predator League models have everything that you would want from the premium version all the way down to the fold over tongue with that elasticated strap. Even the upper is going to have a similar hybrid touch material, but this time for the affordable version, Adidas is calling it hybrid feel. But whatever you call it, I have to say that the upper Adidas is using on this more affordable version is extremely good. It's really soft and pliable to the touch, and as I mentioned with the more expensive version, it almost has a leather-like feel to it. Sometimes with more affordable football boots in general, you can run into the upper feeling a little bit plasticky or maybe bulky, but that's definitely not the case with the Predator Leagues. Now, another element that many of you may be used to seeing on Predators by now are going to be the strike scales that you see on the side of the boot. They're usually these rubber elements that will give you a little bit more grip on the ball when you're shooting or even dribbling. But in the case of the Predator Leagues here, they're basically non-existent. Adidas is instead using what they call strike scale, and it may be hard to see just looking at these in video here, but they're basically just flush with the upper, and they provide almost no added grip whatsoever. So I guess the reason Adidas wanted to include these in the first place was just to make them aesthetically consistent with the other Predator models, but if you're buying the Predator Leagues in the hope that you're going to get some really grippy adhesive elements, that's definitely not going to be the case. They don't really add anything to the boots, but they also don't really take anything away either, so if you like how they look aesthetically, then I guess they're fine. Then on both sides of the boot, right where you see the 3 stripes logo of Adidas, you are going to have a little bit of modest texturing. Moving on to the center of the boots, you're going to have a pretty open U-shaped lacing system in contrast to the Elite version that has a little bit more of a V shape to it. And overall, I do like the lacing system they're using on the League model here because I think it does add a decent amount of adjustability. And then of course on this model, you are going to have this extended tongue that will fold over the entire lacing system, and connected to that tongue, you're gonna have this elasticated strap that you can just pull over and basically place them at a variety of different positions underneath the sole plate. When I was playing in these, I tested out using the elastic strap at a few different positions. I think I actually ended up just having them pretty much in the midpoint of the sole plate for most of the time that I was playing. Either way, where you put the strap isn't really going to affect the performance or the fit of the boots, it's more so just for looks. And then on the inside of the boots, you're going to have a relatively soft inner liner and then also a modest amount of padding towards the heel area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that heel area later because I think it's one of the weak points of these boots. Then moving on to the underside of the boots, you're going to have Adidas's control plate outsole with the same rounded off triangular studs that you see on the Elite version. The studs are definitely going to give you a lot of grip whatever surface you're on. They are intended for use on firm ground natural grass, but I did use these on artificial grass and I didn't notice any problems, and I didn't notice them being overly aggressive. That being said, I find the sole plate construction to be a little bit too rigid, and I find it very hard to get almost any spring whatsoever from the toe box of these boots. All right, now that should cover everything from the design side, so let's talk about how these boots actually feel on feet. Now let me just start off by saying that these boots had every reason to be amazing, especially considering the role that Adidas has been on when it comes to third tier takedown boots, with the newer F50 Leagues being so great. And as I was lacing these up, I felt pretty confident because the upper, I could already tell as soon as I got my feet inside, was really soft across my entire foot. The length felt really great. In my standard 10.5 US, I had just the right amount of space at the end of the boots. And surprisingly, I also found the width to be pretty accommodating on these as well. And I think that that added width isn't necessarily because they changed the shape of the sole plate tooling, but it's just because the upper on these versions feel a little bit less restrictive and more flowing compared to the more rigid upper from the previous year. So everything was going really good, but then I got up and I started walking around. And I noticed immediately that the lockdown just didn't feel great and my heels were starting to slip a little bit in the boots. And I thought that was weird because most of the Adidas boots I've tried on over the past couple years have actually been really good when it comes to lockdown. So I got down and re-tied the boots, made them a little bit tighter across the midfoot and a lot tighter across the ankle area. But even when I redid the laces and got them almost uncomfortably tight around the ankle, I still had that nagging sensation that my feet just weren't completely secure, especially towards the heel area once I was walking around. Now, I didn't have this problem with lockdown at all with the $280 Elite version, even though they're in the exact same size, have a similar shaped sole plate, and the same length. So I figured there had to be something going on. And I was really confident that the issue did have to be towards the heel area of the boots, so I got out my tape measure and ran a couple of tests. And what I noticed after doing a couple measurements is that the height of the heel padding on the Predator Leagues here is 4 centimeters from the insole, where the height of the heel padding on the Elites is 5 centimeters from the insole. So essentially what that means is that the depth your heel is getting in the Predator Leagues is 1 whole centimeter less than what you're getting on the Predator Elites. Now, you may not think that that distance makes a huge difference, but when you're talking about the fit of a shoe, specifically a football boot, 1 centimeter is a massive difference. And to me, this just seems like a massive unforced error on Adidas's part, because it's not like it even would have been an expensive change to the boots to just make the padding a little bit higher in the heel area to give you more lockdown. And it seems like an issue that would have been caught if they were regularly tested throughout their development and if they were compared to the other Predator models and also just other affordable Adidas models. And for me, it's a big shame that the lockdown isn't great on these boots because everything else about the fit is actually really good. Moving on, let's talk about what the Predator Leagues were like to play in. Now, once I got the boots laced up a second time and made them as tight as possible, the lockdown was passable, and they're definitely good enough to play in. And when it comes to the touch on the ball, that's probably my favorite thing about these boots. You really do get that kind of leather-like sensation, and there's still a decent amount of sensitivity with every touch when you're juggling or dribbling, but there's just the right amount of structure and padding and softness to give you that really natural feel. The traction I got from the sole plate was also great. I used these on AG and didn't feel that they were too aggressive, but as I mentioned earlier, I do think they could have done with just a little bit more flexibility towards the toe box, because after a while, especially when I was shooting, I found that my feet started to get a little bit fatigued, and I think a big part of that was just how rigid the sole plate was. And overall, these weren't bad to play in, but they could have just been so much better. In fact, I would give the upper here and overall build quality of these like a 9 out of 10, but that shallow heel and the poor lockdown brings these down to like a 6 out of 10. And if these boots just offered you a little bit more depth in the heel area, and I am just talking about a centimeter or so, they would be so much more fun to play in. It felt like things were going so well, but Adidas just happened to fumble at the finish line. Next up, let's talk about value. So the Predator League FT is actually going to retail for $100. And that is pretty pricey for a third-tier takedown football boot, especially when a couple years ago you could pretty easily get a third-tier model for about $70. And keep in mind, you are actually going to be paying an extra $10 just for the luxury of having this fold-over tongue with the elasticated strap, because the Predator League without this fold-over tongue is going to retail for $90. And the thing is, there are just so many great football boots around the $100 price point, including some others from Adidas. And while there are a lot of great features about the new Predator League, its various shortcomings make it kind of difficult to recommend them among the field of competition. And speaking of the competition, let's talk about some other boots you may want to consider. So I'll start things off with maybe the most obvious boot to compare these to, and that's the premium Predator Elite FT, which I have here. I reviewed these a week ago, and these are actually going to retail for $280. Now, I understand that that is a ton of money, and that's going to be outside of the budget for a lot of players, but if you are someone that does happen to have a little bit of extra money to spend, I honestly think these are the real deal. They're one of the best Predators that I've tried on in a few years. Now, as I said a lot on this channel, spending more money will not always get you a better football boot. But in the case of the Adidas Predator, many of the problems that you find on the Predator League, especially being lockdown, are solved with the more expensive Predator Elite. But Adidas also has some great affordable options around that $100 price point that are, in my opinion, better than the Predator League, the first being the Copa Gloro 2. Now, the Gloro 2 is a full calf leather football boot that kind of has a Predator style to it because you are still getting that fold-over tongue with the elasticated band, and it's going to retail for $99, which makes it virtually the same price as the Predator League FT minus $1. And while I do really like the upper on the Predator Leagues, I think it's going to be a bit thinner than the Copa Gloro and will give you a more sensitive touch on the ball. Overall, in terms of playability and fit, the Gloro 2 is just going to be more comfortable, and I think it's the better overall option. And of course, the Gloros have the benefit of being full leather, so they are going to stretch to accommodate to your feet a little bit over time. And then of course, you have the best takedown model, in my opinion, that Adidas currently sells, and that's the F50 League, which retails for $90. Now, I have the messy variation of the F50 League here, but truth be told, both versions are amazing, whether you get the standard version or the messy one. And they actually have a really similar hybrid touch upper to what you get on the Predators. Maybe just on the F50, you're going to have a slightly glossier coating. But in terms of fit, lockdown, and performance, the F50 League is just going to be the better option. And when you look towards the heel area of the Predator League and the F50 League here, maybe you can just see that Adidas tried to get a little bit too fancy with the heel of the Predator League here, almost going for a really thin design with those plush padded pillows. Whereas if you look at the F50 League here, it's a very, very basic heel. Some may think it's a little bit chunky from just looking at it in this video, but it's a lot more comfortable and it's a lot better performing. So as things currently stand, if you're just looking at Adidas takedowns under $100, the F50 League will still be the way to go. Now, if you've got wider feet, I would actually recommend that you check out another boot that's just over $100, and that's the New Balance 442 V2 Pro. This one's going to come in at $130, but you can often find them on sale. You can get them in the standard variation that I have here, and they also have a wider variation. They're great value, they're extremely lightweight football boots, and they have soft, comfortable, stretchy leather throughout the toe box. So in conclusion, what are my final thoughts on the Predator League FT? These boots were so close to being great, but in the end, they're just okay. And usually I love recommending cheaper models, especially when they perform just as well as their more premium counterparts. But in the case of the Adidas Predator, if you've got the money, I would spring for the elites. And then if you are looking for something more affordable around that $100 price point, just go with the Gloro 2 or the F50 League. Now, I've actually heard some mixed things about these football boots. I know some people have actually liked them, so if you've gotten the chance to try them on, let me know what you think in the comments below. Alright guys, and that is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.